A text message arrived in the family group at 7:43 p.m. You need to step away from things for now. I typed back just 4 words, understood. I'm leaving the fund. 3 hours later, my phone exploded. The bank had frozen the account. They were panicking, but I remained calm. They thought they were cutting me out, but they had actually just hit their own self-destruct switch. Today, it all ends, and my sister is the one holding the trigger. My name is Harper Parker. For the last 15 years, my life has been a study in controlled variables and predictive modeling. At Stonehaven Meridian, I am paid a significant amount of money to see the future. Not in a mystical sense, but in the cold, hard logic of data. I identify, assess, and mitigate risk. I look at a complex system, a market, a supply chain, or a new investment vehicle, and I find the single hairline fracture that everyone else has missed. I find the flaw that, under the right pressure, will shatter the entire structure. I am, by nature and by trade, a person who reads the fine print. My family, the Whitakers, never bothered with fine print. They lived in the bold headlines, the broad gestures, the assumed privileges of a name that used to mean something in this part of the country. They were loud, emotionally driven, and perpetually surprised by consequences. They treated life like a buffet they didn't have to pay for. And for the last 5 years, I had been the one silently picking up the check. The text message arrived at precisely 7:43 p.m. I was in my apartment, 20 floors above the city, watching the rain streak the glass. The city lights blurred into a watercolor of neon and wet asphalt. My phone buzzed on the granite countertop, an intrusion of familial chaos into my ordered world. It was in the Whitakers group chat, the digital town square where my mother, Evelyn, posted saccharine holiday reminders and my father, Colin, forwarded political articles. The message was from my father. Harper, it read, we feel it's best if you step away from things for now, just until we get the new structure sorted. I stared at the words, we feel. The royal we, the collective decision made without the person most affected. Step away. The sterile corporate language of a firing. They were kicking me out, not just from the conversation, but from the Whitaker Family Support Trust. The very entity I was single-handedly keeping solvent. My profession has taught me that emotion is a liability in a moment of crisis. You do not react, you act. My fingers didn't tremble. I didn't type out the angry, wounded screed they were probably expecting, the one they could screenshot and share as proof of my instability. I replied with 4 words, understood. I'm leaving the fund. Before any of them could even type, what do you mean, my thumb was already on another app. I navigated to my secure banking portal, the one tied to my personal wealth management account. I went to scheduled transfers. There it was, the Whitaker Family Support Trust. A significant 5-figure sum transferred on the 1st of every month. I didn't just pause the contribution. I cancelled the entire automated schedule. A pop-up asked, are you sure? I pressed confirm. The digital handshake was instantaneous. My action was complete. The armor was on. The pin was pulled. Then I did nothing. I silenced my phone and placed it face down on the counter. I made myself a cup of tea. I watched the rain. What my father, my mother Evelyn, my uncle Malcolm Pierce, and my accountant cousin Brent Lawson had forgotten, or more likely had never bothered to read, was the private clause I had insisted on 5 years ago when my grandfather, Harlan Whitaker, had established the trust. He had pulled me aside. He was a difficult man, but he was not a fool. He knew his children. He had put in the initial $2 million, but he knew that without a steady, intelligent hand, Colin and Malcolm would drain it on bad investments and ego projects within a year. You're the backstop, Harper, he'd said, his hand resting on the thick vellum of the trust agreement. They won't like it, but you'll be the primary donor, and with that comes the power. The clause was buried deep in the appendices, drafted not by the family's sleepy local lawyer, but by my own team from Stonehaven. It was a supervisory trigger. As the primary donor, contributing over 40% of the trust's active capital, my participation was structural. If my contribution ceased, or if the trust's liquid value dropped by more than 30% in a single fiscal quarter, which my cancelled contribution would now guarantee, it triggered an immediate automatic supervisory freeze by the bank. Not a closure, but a freeze, an audit, a lockdown. The bank's fiduciary department, bound by law, would be required to examine every transaction for the last 36 months. They would be forced to justify every penny going out. My family thought they were cutting off a rebellious daughter. What they had actually done was trigger a full-scale forensic audit on themselves, orchestrated by the very mechanism they were trying to seize control of. I knew exactly what the bank would find because I had already found it myself. The silence lasted 7 hours, during which I read a novel, answered 3 work emails, and prepared my mind for the coming storm. At precisely 3:30 a.m., the phone began to vibrate. It wasn't a single call, it was a deluge, an electronic scream. I turned the phone over. Dad Colin called. The call rang out immediately. Mom Evelyn ignored it immediately. Uncle Malcolm ignored it. A text from Brent, Harper, pick up the phone now. It's an emergency. Then Colin again, then Evelyn, then Malcolm. A frantic, cyclical panic. They knew. Not the why, but the what. Their access was gone. The bank, efficient and impersonal, would have sent a single, sterile email to the trust administrators, Brent and my father, the moment the market opened in Zurich, where the trust's primary accounts were domiciled. Access restricted, pending supervisory review. The ATM cards for the trust wouldn't work. The automatic payments for Whitaker Builders' payroll would bounce. The check to my grandmother's nursing home would be flagged. The money tap had been turned off, and they were, for the first time in their lives, thirsty. I let them ring. I let the panic build in the darkness of my apartment. I walked to my home office, the screen of my phone lighting up the hallway like a strobe light with their incoming calls. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't need to check the bank. I needed to check my justification. I opened an encrypted file. The password was a long, complex alphanumeric string that was ironically the date of the one family vacation that hadn't ended in a fight. The file was named R.H.A. Coleman Preliminary Findings WFST. Rhea Coleman was a name that made people in my industry sit up straight. She was an independent forensic investigator, a bloodhound who could smell a fraudulent invoice from a mile away. I had hired her 2 weeks ago, paying her exorbitant fee out of my own pocket after I'd seen the quarterly report from the trust. Brent, who had a community college accounting degree and the arrogance of a Wall Street titan, had presented it himself at a family gathering. The numbers were dressed up in glossy charts, but I saw the fracture immediately. A line item, administrative retainers, had ballooned. Last year, it was $12,000 for the whole year. This quarter alone, it was listed at $68,000. What's this, Brent? I had asked, keeping my voice mild. Standard fees, Harper, he deflected, shuffling his papers. Lawyers, bank charges, advisory commissions. It's complex stuff. My father had cut in. Don't micromanage, Harper. Brent's got it handled. I hired Rhea the next day. Her report had landed in my inbox this very afternoon, just 4 hours before my father's text. I scrolled through the PDF. Rhea hadn't just found a fracture, she'd found a sinkhole. First, the administrative retainers. They weren't going to lawyers. Rhea had traced the wire transfers. They were going to 3 ghost vendors, Pierce Strategic Solutions, Lawson Holdings, and Midwest Logistics. Pierce, as in my uncle Malcolm Pierce. Lawson, as in my cousin Brent Lawson. The invoices they'd submitted were laughable: market analysis, logistical consulting, fiduciary oversight. The money was being laundered crudely and arrogantly right out the front door. But that wasn't the worst of it. RIA had flagged a series of capital transfers, large ones marked as investments in regional development projects. These required a secondary approval from me as the primary donor. And there, on the digital transfer authorizations, was my signature, my digital signature, an encrypted key I kept locked in a biometric vault. It was a forgery, a very good one, but a forgery nonetheless. RIA had already traced the metadata. The IP address used to authorize the transfers didn't belong to my apartment, my office at Stonehaven, or even my phone. It belonged to the main office of Whitaker Builders, my father's company. RIA's final summary was a masterpiece of cold professional fury. The ghost vendors, Malcolm and Brent, were just the middlemen. They were skimming, but the real money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, was being systematically siphoned from the family support trust using my forged signature and injected directly into Whitaker Builders. My father was using the trust as his personal slush fund. He was stealing my money and my grandfather's legacy to prop up his failing business and his fragile ego. He was using money meant for his own mother's medical care, for his nieces' and nephews' college funds, to cover his bad bets. And the text message at 7:43 p.m. It all snapped into place. They weren't just cutting me out because I was asking questions. They were cutting me out to get the last bit of control. They must have been planning to restructure the trust, to remove my signature authority. They were trying to sever my connection before I found the body. They had no idea I was already standing over it, holding the coroner's report. My phone buzzed again. A new text message from my mother: "Harper, your father is worried sick. The bank has made a terrible mistake. Please call us. We need you to help fix this. We need you to help fix this." They had forged my name, stolen my money, and tried to exile me. And now, cornered by the consequences of their own actions, they were demanding I ride in and save them. They weren't even smart enough to realize that *I* was the terrible mistake the bank had made. I looked at the glowing screen. I looked at RIA Coleman's report. I decided in that cold, quiet office at 3:50 a.m. that I was done mitigating risk. It was time to become one. I put the phone back face down. I didn't call Colin. I didn't call Evelyn. I didn't call Malcolm or Brent. I let the phone vibrate itself off the desk. I let the rope tighten. Let them scream into the void. The sun was coming up, and I knew with the absolute certainty of a mathematical proof that they would be at my door by 9 a.m. The panic had subsided. The frantic 3:30 a.m. calls had stopped, as if by a shared, unspoken signal. The silence they left behind was louder. It was the sound of my father, Colin, and my uncle, Malcolm Pierce, finally understanding that their lifelines had been cut and realizing they didn't know how to swim. My apartment was dark, save for the blue-white glow of my laptop screen. Open on it was RIA Coleman's report, the instrument of their destruction, and my justification. My eyes kept drifting to one name in the executive summary: Pierce Strategic Solutions. It wasn't just a ghost company. It was a ghost. My uncle Malcolm, the man who had taught me how to bait a hook, was now baiting a trust fund meant for his own family. The rot wasn't new, it had just been invisible. To understand what was happening at 3:30 in the morning, you had to go back 3 years to the day my grandfather, Harlan Whitaker, signed the papers. Harlan was a bastard, but he was a clear-eyed bastard. He had built an empire in construction and logistics from nothing, and he knew with the crushing certainty of a creator that his own children were not capable of maintaining it. He created the Whitaker Family Support Trust, not from a place of generosity, but from a place of deep, profound mistrust. He sat me down in his study, the smell of old leather, and his impossibly expensive cigars filling the air. He pushed the trust agreement across his mahogany desk. "This is $2 million, Harper," he'd said, his voice a low rumble. "It's not a gift, it's a test." He called it seed money. I saw it for what it was, bait. The mechanism was designed with surgical precision. It was a voluntary contribution fund. Family members could contribute, and family members could apply for grants. The applications were specific, vetted, and, in Harlan's mind, noble: college tuition, medical emergencies, down payments on first homes. It was meant to be a safety net, a way for the Whitakers to thrive, to build generational equity. It was never meant to be a trough. "They'll try to break it," Harlan had warned me, looking not at me, but at a portrait of his own children, my father and my uncle, on the mantel. "They'll see it as an allowance. Your job is to be the wall." For the first year, while he was alive, it worked. The contributions were small, but they came in. The applications were legitimate. Then Harlan died. And the moment the dirt hit his coffin, the voluntary contributions from everyone else stopped. Just like that, the faucet turned off. The only ones applying for grants were the ones who had never put a dime in. I was faced with the choice Harlan had predicted. I could let the trust wither and die, failing his final test, or I could become its sole life support. I chose the burden. My contributions started to climb from a supplemental 10% to a structural 40%. My money earned at Stonehaven, earned by seeing the fractures in other people's systems, became the concrete foundation for my entire family's safety net. They all knew it. They just preferred not to talk about it. It was easier to pretend the money was just there. And with Harlan gone, the system needed a new administrator, a new bookkeeper. That's when Brent stepped in. I remember it vividly. We were at my parents' house, picking through the bland catered sandwiches after the funeral service. My cousin Brent, Malcolm's son, slid into the seat next to me. Brent, who always looked like his suit was trying to escape his body. Brent, who waved his community college accounting degree around like it was a medical license. "Harper," he'd said, his voice slick with manufactured sympathy, "you're so busy, Stonehaven, all that travel. It's too much for you to manage the trust's books." He wasn't wrong. I was billing 70-hour weeks. "Let me take it on," he'd offered, flashing a weak smile. "It's the least I can do for the family. I'll run the quarterly reports, handle the applications. It's just simple administration." He didn't want to help. He wanted the keys. He wanted the ledger. He wanted to be the man who decided which application was valid and which wasn't. And I, exhausted from grief and overwhelmed by work, made the single greatest risk assessment error of my career. I said yes. I mistook ambition for altruism. I gave the fox the keys to the digital hen house. For 2 years, it ran quietly. The reports Brent sent were glossy, filled with bar graphs and pie charts showing growth and utilization. I was busy. I was contributing my 40%. The system I thought was stable until 2 weeks ago. The family had gathered for its quarterly trust update, a ridiculous formality Brent insisted on. We were at the Lake Rowan Lodge, a place my father insisted on renting to get our heads clear. The reality was it had bad cell service, which meant I couldn't easily pull up my own data to cross-reference Brent's. The air in the conference room was stale, smelling of old coffee and the damp wool of my uncle's blazer. Brent was at the front, clicking through a PowerPoint presentation that looked like it had been designed in 1998. He was beaming, pointing to a graph that showed our disbursements were optimizing family potential. "And if you look here," he said, the red laser pointer shaking slightly. You'll see we've managed to keep our administrative overhead impressively lean. He clicked to the next slide, a pie chart, expenses. My eyes snapped to one sliver, a calm corporate blue. Administrative retainers. The number next to it was $68,000. The room was silent, but my pulse was a hammer. I held up a hand. Brent, go back. He flinched. What, Harper? We have a lot to get through. Go back one slide. He clicked back. The pie chart reappeared. I kept my voice flat, the way I do at work when I find a critical error in a prospectus. 68,000 for 1 quarter. Brent's smile twitched. That's right. Impressively lean. Like I said, last year I said our total administrative cost for the entire year was $12,000. This quarter it's 68. Who are we retaining? Brent's smile faltered. The entire Supreme Court. A nervous laugh stuttered out of him. Well, you know, Harper, fees, lawyers, bank charges, advisory commissions. It's complex international stuff. I watched him. He wasn't just nervous, he was scared. He looked to his left at his father, my Uncle Malcolm. Then he looked to his right at my father, Colin. And that was it. The moment the fracture revealed itself. It wasn't a look of confusion. It wasn't, what is she talking about? It was a look of pure, shared conspiracy. A silent, millisecond-long conversation that screamed, she's found it. Stall her. My father, Colin, cleared his throat, taking on the role of the disappointed patriarch. Harper, let's not micromanage. Brent is handling this. We're talking about legal fees, tax advisory. You, of all people, should understand that complex instruments require complex management. My Uncle Malcolm jumped in, his voice gruff and impatient. He's right. You want the best people handling our money. You have to pay for it. This isn't your corporate piggy bank, Harper. It's the family. It's complex stuff. Bank charges, legal fees. The excuses were too fast. They were too vague. And they were, professionally speaking, garbage. The trust structure was simple. The grants were straightforward. There was no international tax advisory that cost $68,000 a quarter. They were lying. And they were lying in unison. My professional instinct, the one honed by 15 years of sniffing out fraud, wasn't just tingling. It was a 5-alarm fire. I didn't push. A cornered animal is predictable. A plated animal is sloppy. I gave them a tight smile. You're right. My apologies, Brent. It just seemed high. Why don't you just send me the itemized invoices from those firms, just for my records? The IRS is auditing my bracket this year, and I need to account for all my charitable schedules. The color drained from Brent's face. My father's jaw tightened. Of course, Brent stammered. I'll get those together for you. I left the lodge, my heels clicking on the old wooden porch. I got into my car, drove exactly 2.4 miles down the access road until I had full bars of cell service, and pulled onto the shoulder. I dialed a number I kept in my secure contacts, not on my main list. Rhea Coleman. Her voice was like gravel and whiskey. Rhea, it's Harper Parker. I have a problem. Everyone who calls me has a problem, Ms. Parker. What's yours? A family trust. I'm the primary donor. The administrator is my cousin. The books are cooked. I found a line item, administrative retainers that's ballooned. I need to know who. I need to know where. There was a pause. I heard her typing. You're at Stonehaven. You're not a fool. You know what you're asking for. You're asking me to investigate your family. I'm asking you to follow the money, I corrected her. I'm authorizing you to trace every single dollar starting 3 years ago. That's a full forensic deep dive, she said. That's not cheap. And it'll take me 2 weeks, maybe 3. I am thorough. I expect you to be, I said. Send me your retainer. I'm paying out of pocket. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks of agonizing, polite silence. 2 weeks of me playing the beautiful, busy daughter while I knew Ria was digging. And that brought me back to this morning, or rather, yesterday afternoon. Ria's report landed in my encrypted inbox at 3:15 p.m. It was a digital bomb. It confirmed everything my gut had screamed at the lodge. The ghost vendors, the IP address for the forged signatures tracing back to Whitaker Builders, the systematic siphoning of my money, my grandfather's money, into my father's failing business. And then, just 4 hours later, at 7:43 p.m., my father's text message arrived. Harper, we feel it's best if you step away from things for now. I finally understood. The timing wasn't a coincidence. They must have found out about Ria. Brent, the clumsy accountant, must have seen a digital footprint he didn't recognize in the trust's servers, a query from the bank, an auditor's request. They panicked. They knew the report was coming. They thought if they could kick me out, sever my connection to the trust before I could act on the report, they could contain it. They thought they could void my authority. It was a clumsy, desperate, idiotic move. They thought they were stamping out a small fire. They had no idea I was holding the gasoline. I looked at the clock on my stove. 5:45 a.m. The sky over the city was turning from black to a bruised, sickly purple. They had about 3 hours and 15 minutes left of their old lives. I knew with the cold, hard certainty of a risk mitigation model that they would be at my door by 9 a.m., and I would be ready. I heard the elevator chime in the main hall. My building system was quiet, discreet, but in the silence of my apartment, it sounded like a gavel. 9:15 a.m. They were perfectly, agonizingly predictable. My intercom buzzed, a harsh, jagged tear in the morning quiet. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. I pressed the entry button, the electronic click sealing their path to me. I walked to my front door and waited. I heard their footsteps. Hurried, clumsy, a frantic clatter on the marble floor of the hallway. They weren't just a delegation. They were a posse. The knock wasn't a request, it was a demand. 3 hard, rapid-fire raps that vibrated the heavy steel of my door. I took one final, centering breath. At Stonehaven, I had faced down hostile board members, activist investors, and federal regulators. They were just family. They were just thieves. I pulled the door open. They stood there, framed in the doorway, a tableau of panic. My father, Colin, his face a mottled, unhealthy red. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie skewed, as if he'd been pulling at it since his call to me at 3:30 a.m. My mother, Evelyn, stood slightly behind him, her hand clutching his arm. She was the professional victim, her eyes already wide and brimming with the tears she could summon on command. And my uncle Malcolm Pierce, he was the muscle, the ID. He vibrated with a raw, undirected anger, his big hands clenched at his sides. The one person conspicuously absent was Brent. Of course. Brent, the accountant, was the architect. He knew the precise legal terminology for what he had done. He wasn't stupid enough to be present for this confrontation. He was, I had no doubt, at his computer somewhere, frantically trying to delete the digital breadcrumbs. They had sent the bullies. The ones who still believed this could be solved by yelling. My mother surged forward, her voice a practiced wail. Harper, thank God. We've been trying to reach you all morning. There's a terrible situation at the bank. I didn't move. I didn't invite them in. I blocked the threshold. Hello, Mother. My father pushed past her, shoving his way into my foyer. He didn't have time for the pleasantries. What did you do? It wasn't a question. It was an indictment. The sheer, unmitigated arrogance of it almost made me laugh. He, who had forged my name and stolen my money, was accusing me. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, my voice as flat and cold as the granite countertops behind me. Don't play dumb, Harper, Malcolm snarled, crowding in behind my father. The two of them were now in my space, uninvited. My mother scurried in after them, closing the door, as if to trap me. The bank, my father said, his voice dropping to a theatrical, intimidating growl. They've locked us out. They've frozen the trust completely. They are demanding 3 years of records. Harper, a full forensic audit. They said a supervisory trigger was hit. That was you. You did this. You sicked the bank on your own family after everything we've done for you, my mother whispered, the tears finally spilling over. I looked at the three of them. The unearned fury, the reflexive victimhood, the absolute refusal to accept a single consequence. I did exactly what you asked me to do, I said. My father's tirade stopped mid-intake of breath. What? At 7:43 p.m. Last night, I received a text message from this family, from you, Dad. It said, and I quote, Harper, we feel it's best if you step away from things for now. So, I did. I respected your decision. I left the fund. A beat of confused silence. They weren't connecting it. They were too slow, blinded by their own panic. What? What does that mean? Evelyn asked, dabbing at her eyes. It means, I said, enunciating every syllable, that I immediately cancelled my monthly contribution, all of them, permanently. My father stared at me. You stopped paying. You kicked me out. You can't have it both ways, I said. You can't exile the primary donor, and still expect the donations to continue. Malcolm, who had never understood the mechanics, just shook his head. So what? So you're petty. So you stopped your allowance. That doesn't give you the right to call the bank, and have them freeze us. I didn't call anyone, Uncle Malcolm, I said. The calm in my voice was making them twitch. I didn't have to. You, of all people, should have known the rules. But I suppose Brent never bothered to read the fine print of the agreement, did he? I was referencing the Harlan clause, the failsafe my grandfather and I had built in. You seem to have forgotten, I continued, that as the primary donor, contributing over 40% of the trust's active capital, my participation is structural. The supervisory clause, the one Brent was supposed to be monitoring, states that if my contributions cease, or if the liquid value drops by more than 30% in a single quarter, an automatic freeze is triggered. The bank's fiduciary department is now legally required to conduct a full audit to protect the fund's assets. I let the words hang in the air. You didn't get a call from me. You got a call from the consequences. You cut the main support beam, and the whole house froze. That's just risk management. The color drained from my father's face. He finally understood. This wasn't an attack. It was a mathematical certainty. You have to fix this, he stammered. Fix what? I asked. The audit. You've ruined us. Malcolm exploded, taking a step toward me. I don't think I'm the one who did the ruining. Malcolm, I said, and I dropped the first bomb. Or should I be speaking to the CEO of Pierce Strategic Solutions? My uncle froze. It was a direct hit. That was the name of his ghost company, the one I'd found in Rhea Coleman's report. My mother looked confused. Pierce Strategic what? Ask him, I said, nodding at my uncle. Ask him about the administrative retainers. Ask him about the $68,000 in fees you all billed the family last quarter. Ask him about the $28,000 the quarter before that and the $40,000 before that. Ask him what market analysis he provided for a fund that only pays for tuition and medical bills. I turned to my father. Or maybe I should ask you, Dad. Maybe we should talk about the capital transfers, the ones to Whitaker Builders. Now, you hold on, my father said, raising a hand. No, **** hold on, I shot back, my voice finally rising, sharp as glass. Let's talk about my digital signature. The one that was forged repeatedly from an IP address at your office to authorize hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments from the trust. Investments that went directly into your failing company. You, I said, pointing at him, have been using the trust as your personal slush fund. You've been stealing money meant for your mother's medical care to prop up your vanity project. Lies, my father roared. You don't know what you're talking about. I have the report. I yelled back. I have the wire transfer records. I have the IP logs. I have the invoices from the ghost vendors. I hired Rhea Coleman. I have everything. The name landed like a grenade. My father flinched. He did know. My theory was right. They knew Rhea was digging. The text message last night wasn't an exile. It was a panicked, clumsy attempt to sever my authority before this very report became public. They hadn't been fast enough. Malcolm, the cornered animal, saw only one way out. You fix this, he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. You call that bank right now. You tell them it was all a misunderstanding. You tell them you were emotional. You tell them you're back in. You turn the money back on. Harper, now. And say what exactly? I asked, crossing my arms. That I'd like to report a mistake. That they should stop the audit I just triggered. That I, a senior risk analyst at Stonehaven Meridian, would like to personally vouch for a series of fraudulent wire transfers. You're asking me to lie to a federal banking institution. You're asking me to become your accomplice. I am asking you to save this family, my father shouted. You are asking me to commit a felony to cover up yours, I said, my voice dropping back to ice. My entire career is built on integrity, my license, my reputation. You are asking me to burn my whole life down to hide the fact that you are a common thief. That's when my father's tactic shifted. The anger vanished, replaced by a terrible, practiced sorrow. He was reaching for the guilt lever, the one he had installed in me since childhood. Harper, he said, his voice breaking. This isn't about the books. This isn't about us. This is about the family, the people who are getting hurt right now. My mother, seeing her cue, stepped forward, her hand on her heart. Your grandmother, Harper, Matilda, her payment, the one for the nursing home. It's due today. Colin just got the call. It's going to bounce. They said they might not be able to hold her bed. And your cousins, my father added, his eyes pleading, their tuition payments for the semester. They are due this week. Little Liam's medical fund that's frozen, too. Do you understand what you've done? You're hurting the children. You're hurting an old, sick woman. Over what? Pride? A little bit of money. There it was. The human shield. They had gathered the most vulnerable members of our family, the very people the trust was designed to protect, and placed them directly between themselves and the consequences of their crimes. They believed this was my weakness. They believed I would fold. They were wrong. I looked at my father, his face a mask of false concern. "You," I said, my voice shaking with a cold, clear rage I hadn't known I possessed. "You used your own mother's medical security as collateral for your bad business debts. You put her at risk, not me." I turned to Malcolm. "You stole money meant for your own family's children. You put their tuition at risk. And finally, to my mother, and you? You stood by and watched them do it. You said nothing because you were too cowardly to question the checks that paid for your lunches." I walked past them. I grabbed the handle of my front door and pulled it wide open. The bright, neutral light of the hallway flooded the foyer. "This conversation is over." They stared, stunned. "I am not fixing this. The audit will proceed. The freeze will hold. What happens next is between you, the bank, and, I imagine, the district attorney's office. Now get out of my apartment." My father's face contorted. You will not speak to me this way. I am your father." "You are a thief," I said, my voice dead. "And if you are not out of my home in the next 10 seconds, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing." The word police finally broke the spell. It was a language they understood. Evelyn gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Malcolm, his face pale, grabbed my father's arm. "Colin, we are leaving." My father looked at me one last time. His eyes were not sad. They were not remorseful. They were full of pure, unadulterated hatred. He had been beaten, and he would never forgive me for it. "You'll regret this, Harper," he whispered. "You've just destroyed this family." "No," I said as he turned to leave. "I just exposed it." They shuffled out, the bully, the patriarch, and the enabler. I watched them go. I shut the door, and the heavy, oil thud of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I leaned against the door, my heart hammering, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me hollow. I had done it. I had finally. My phone buzzed on the counter. It wasn't them. Their numbers were now blocked. It was one single new message. It was from my sister, Lydia. Lydia, the youngest, the good one, the artist who lived in a different city and floated above the ugly, transactional nature of the Whitakers. The one who just wanted peace. Her text read, "Harper, I just got a call from the nursing home. Grandma's payment was declined. They said the fund is frozen. Dad called me. Hysterical. He said, you did it. Is it true? Was that you?" The smear campaign had already begun. They were painting me as the monster, the one hurting our grandmother, and they had just aimed their most innocent, most powerful weapon directly at my heart. Lydia's text was a blade. Was that you? They had fired their most effective weapon. My father, in his desperation, had aimed my own sister at me. I stared at the message, the words blurring. He had known instinctively that while I could withstand his rage, and my mother's tears, Lydia's disappointed innocence was a different kind of armor-piercing round. I did not text her back an explanation. An explanation I knew would be screenshot, forwarded to the family chat, and torn apart by my father as excuses. I acted. I picked up my phone, bypassed Lydia's message, and called the billing department at the Willows, my grandmother's nursing home. "Billing, this is Cynthia," a tired voice answered. "Cynthia, my name is Harper Parker. I'm calling about my grandmother, Matilda Whitaker. I understand her payment for the month was declined." "Ah, yes, Ms. Parker. The voice turned wary. We spoke to your father this morning. He said there was a mix-up with the family fund. There was, I said, pulling my personal wallet from my bag. What is the outstanding balance for her account? It's $5,450 for the month. Please take this card number, I said, reading off the digits of my personal Amex. I am paying the balance in full right now. Furthermore, please remove the Whitaker Family Support Trust as the primary payer on her account. Put my name, this card, set it for autopay. From now on, all bills for Matilda Whitaker come to me directly. Is that understood? There was a pause. The sound of typing. Yes, Ms. Parker, we can certainly do that. That's very generous. It's not generous, I said. It's necessary. A moment later, the email receipt hit my inbox. I screenshotted it. I opened my text to Lydia. I sent her the image, the paid-in-full receipt. I typed, it's handled. It was never about her. She is safe. I'll call you when I can. Then I grabbed my keys. I didn't call Lydia. I didn't trust my voice. And I didn't trust my father not to be listening in, to be coaching her from the next room. The drive to the Willows was 20 minutes of pure, vibrating silence. The rage from the 9:15 a.m. confrontation had cooled, solidified into something heavier and more dangerous, resolve. They had used my grandmother as a pawn. They had crossed a line, and they had no idea what kind of war they had just declared. The Willows smelled of industrial cleaner, powdered soup, and the faint, sweet decay of old flowers. I hated this place, but Matilda seemed to find a grim comfort in it. I found her in the solarium, sitting in a wheelchair, staring out at a meticulously manicured, completely joyless courtyard. Harper, she said without turning. Her voice was thin, but the steel I remembered from my grandfather was still in it. I expected you. Grandma, I said, pulling up a hard plastic chair. Your father called, she said flatly. And your mother and your uncle. A lot of noise, a lot of flapping. They sounded like chickens who'd seen a fox. The fox is in the hen house. Grandma, I said. She turned to look at me, her eyes pale, milky blue, but they were sharp. They missed nothing. They said you froze the money. They stole it, I said. They stole it, and they got caught. They forged my name. Grandma, they funneled money from the trust, your money, into Dad's company. I expected shock. I expected denial, or at least the same wounded disbelief as Lydia. Matilda simply nodded, a slow, tired gesture. So, it's finally come apart. What do you mean, finally? She looked back out the window. You think your father built that company? Whitaker Builders. You think your grandfather Harlan built his? You think all this legacy came from hard work and contracts? I waited. Your grandfather, she said, her voice dropping, was a brilliant man and a terrible one. He had appetites. He liked cards. He liked horses. He liked betting on things he couldn't control. And he lost, Harper. He lost big. We almost lost the house. We almost lost everything twice. This was not the family history I knew. The history I knew was one of grit, of Harlan pulling himself up by his bootstraps. He got in deep, Matilda continued, with partners, dark partners, men who didn't take IOUs, men who wanted their money, and wanted it with interest that could break a man's legs. A chill ran up my spine. This was the family tragedy, the dirty secret behind the respectable facade. And who do you think cleaned it up? She asked. Dad, I whispered. Colin, your father. He wasn't a builder. Not then. He was a magician. He learned how to move money, how to make it disappear from one account where the partners were looking and reappear in another. He created shell companies, holding accounts, consulting fees. My blood ran cold. She was naming the exact methodology from Rhea Coleman's report. Pierce Strategic Solutions, I said aloud. Lawson Holdings, she said, waving a dismissive hand. He had different names for them then. But it's the same game. It's the only game he knows. Your father's talent isn't building. It's hiding. It all clicked into place. The arrogance, the entitlement, the utter lack of guilt during the confrontation this morning. He wasn't stealing, Grandma, I realized. In his mind, he was just moving it. He was doing what he'd always done. He was saving the family. What started as a shield for Harlan's sins, Matilda said, became a sword for his own. He propped up your grandfather's failing reputation, and when Harlan died, he just kept doing it, propping up his own failing business. He believes any money he can touch is his to manage, including yours, including mine. He thinks he's the patriarch protecting us. But he's just his father's son, a gambler who lost control. We sat in silence. The truth of it settled over me, heavy as a shroud. This wasn't a simple case of fraud. This was a generational sickness. He won't stop, Harper, Matilda said, finally looking at me. You understand that, don't you? You've cornered him. He won't just apologize and give it back. He will burn the entire house down with you in it before he admits he failed. Her words hung in the air as I drove home. Asterisk, he will burn the entire house down. Asterisk, I let myself into my apartment. The silence was different. The confrontation this morning had left a psychic stain. I walked to my home office and I stopped. Something was wrong. It was subtle. The air was different. A smell, that cologne. A faint, spicy scent that didn't belong to me. I looked at my desk. Everything was neat. Too neat. My work laptop, my personal one. Not the Stonehaven issue, was gone. I looked at the printer. The tray was empty. My hand went to the top drawer of my desk. The one where I'd put the hard copy of Rhea Coleman's preliminary report. I pulled the handle. It was locked, as it should be. But I looked closer at the latch mechanism. There was a fresh scratch, a tiny, bright sliver of silver on the black metal. The entire desk was just wrong. It was about a half-inch to the left of where it always sat, misaligned with the scuff mark on the hardwood floor. Someone had moved it. My blood turned to ice. I ran to my building manager's office in the lobby. David, I said, I need to see the security footage for my floor hallway camera for the last 3 hours. David, a good man who I tipped heavily at Christmas, looked alarmed. Ms. Parker, is something wrong? Someone was in my apartment, I said, my voice tight. It took him 5 minutes to pull up the feed. We watched. There I was, leaving for the Willows, then nothing. Wait, I said. Go back. Right there. A figure, not from the elevator, but from the stairs. He was wearing a baseball cap and a utility jacket, his back to the camera, but I knew that walk, that bullish, impatient stride. That's my uncle, I whispered. Malcolm Pierce. We watched as he walked right up to my door. He didn't pick the lock. He didn't jimmy it. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key, and let himself in. He was inside for exactly 8 minutes. He emerged carrying a slim briefcase, my laptop bag. He went back down the stairs. He had a key, David said, stunned. I don't. My mother, I said, the realization hitting me. She must have had a spare from years ago. She gave it to him. My own mother had given my uncle the key to my home so he could rob me. This was the escalation. This was Matilda's warning. They weren't just arguing. They were retaliating. I drove to the 18th precinct. I was done. The line had been crossed. The unspoken family truce had been violated. Not by me, but by them. I sat across from a detective whose nameplate read Diaz. I filed a police report, burglary, breaking and entering. I named my uncle, Malcolm Pierce. I listed the stolen items, one Dell XPS laptop, serial number, and printed confidential financial documents. Family? Diaz asked, his pen hovering over the paper. Yes, I said. It gets messy, he warned. It's already messy, I replied. I want to press charges. I walked out of the precinct and into the afternoon light, feeling stripped bare. I had just declared war. When I got home, I did what I should have done hours ago. I ran a full deep skin credit check on myself. As a risk analyst, I had premium accounts with all 3 bureaus. The alerts hit my screen like a spray of bullets. 3 new credit cards had been opened in my name. Not today. 3 days ago, a Capital One, an Amex Platinum, a Chase Sapphire. All 3 had been maxed out. Cash advances, $20,000 each. $60,000 in fraudulent debt, tied to my social security number. I felt the floor drop out from under me. This wasn't just retaliation. This was the frame. This was the narrative they were building. This was why they weren't just afraid. They were organized. They stole my laptop, which had my personal data. They opened cards. They maxed them out. My God, they weren't just trying to cover their own theft. They were trying to create mine. I fumbled for my phone, my Stonehaven phone, the encrypted one. I called Rhea. Parker, she answered. Rhea, they were in my apartment. Malcolm Pierce. He took my laptop. He took the hard copy of your report. The cloud. Parker, she said, her voice all business. Is the cloud safe? The cloud is safe, I confirmed. The full report, all the evidence was on her encrypted servers, not my hard drive. They had stolen a copy, not the original. Good, she said, because they are moving faster than I thought. The break-in isn't the only move they made. I know, I said, my voice hollow. I just found $60,000 in fraudulent credit card debt in my name. I was afraid of that, Rhea said. They are papering you, creating a story that you're the one who's desperate for cash, that you're the one with the motive to steal. But that's not all. My phone buzzed with an incoming text, a number I didn't recognize. Rhea, hold on. It was a text from a burner number. No words, just an image. It was a diagram, a flowchart. My eyes scanned it. At the top, Whitaker Family Support Trust, arrows, Pierce Strategic Solutions, Lawson Holdings. Rhea had found those. But then the chart continued. Arrows led from those shells to 3 new ones. And from those 3, arrows pointed to a list of names, PACS, political action committees, illegal campaign contributions. My God, I whispered. This wasn't just family fraud. This wasn't just bank fraud. This was a federal crime. Parker, you still there? Rhea's voice crackled. Someone, I said, just sent me a diagram of their entire money laundering scheme. It's political. This is bigger than Whitaker Builders. Who? Rhea demanded. I don't know. Before Rhea could answer, my other phone buzzed. A notification from my personal bank. I swiped to open it. I'd been trying to buy a coffee on the way home from the precinct. It had been declined. I'd assumed it was a fraud alert. It wasn't. A large red banner flashed across my banking app. Account frozen. Pending legal review. A court order has been placed on all accounts associated with Harper R. Parker. They hadn't just framed me with debt. They had used that debt. They had gone to a judge. They had presented a picture of me as a desperate, indebted thief. They had frozen my money, my personal accounts, my salary, my savings. I was standing in my own apartment, which my uncle had a key to, staring at a diagram of federal crimes, and I was locked out of my entire life. Matilda was right. They weren't just running. They were burning the house down, and they had just lit the match under my feet. The weekend was a tight, airless drum. My world, once defined by high-speed data and immediate access, had shrunk to the size of the emergency cash I kept in my desk. $2,100. That was my entire liquid worth. The court order my father had secured was a masterpiece of legal violence. It hadn't just frozen my assets. It had flagged my name. My personal cards were useless plastic. My salary from Stonehaven, set to deposit that Friday, had vanished into a legal black hole. I was a ghost. I spent Saturday and Sunday in a caffeine-fueled haze in public libraries, using their Wi-Fi to map out the attack. They had used the $60,000 in fraudulent debt as the motive. They had used the stolen copy of Ria's report, twisted to look like my own notes, as the method. They had presented me to a judge as a desperate, high-risk employee committing fraud. And they had done it fast, before I could even file a response. By Monday morning, I wasn't just broke. I was radioactive. I walked into the lobby of Stonehaven Meridian at 8:55 a.m. The air was cold, the marble floors polished to a mirror sheen. Frank, the lobby guard who usually joked with me about the weather, just gave me a tight, professional nod. Ms. Parker, Ms. Lowell's assistant asked that you come straight to the 34th floor conference room. Not my office on 26, the 34th floor, the executive floor, where the air was thinner and the carpets were thicker, where they didn't have conversations. They had terminations. The room was already full. Sabrina Lowell, my boss, sat at the head of the long, dark table, her expression a mask of corporate neutrality. To her left, Bernard from legal, his thin glasses already perched on his nose. To his left, Keith from compliance, a man who always looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. And one other man, a stranger. He was in an off-the-rack grey suit that was too tight in the shoulders, holding a worn leather portfolio. He had the dead, patient eyes of a man who audits for a living. Harper, thank you for joining us, Sabrina said. Her voice was flat, stripped of its usual warmth. This is Mr. Vance. She didn't say where he was from. She didn't have to. The suit, the portfolio, the institutional pull, he was from a self-regulatory organization, the body that governed our industry, the people who held my licenses, my entire professional future in their hands. My father hadn't just frozen my accounts. He had reported me to my own regulators. Harper, Keith from compliance started, his voice a rasp. We received a priority notification late Friday. It concerns a court order filed against your personal assets by a third party. We've also received a formal complaint. Mr. Vance cut in, his voice as grey as his suit. He opened his portfolio. It's regarding your role as a signatory on a private entity, the Whitaker Family Support Trust. This was it, the trap. Vance looked down at his notes. The complaint alleges, Ms. Parker, that your encrypted digital signature was used to authorize a series of transfers from the trust, transfers that appear to be fraudulent, routed through several shell corporations, and tied to fraudulent invoices. He looked up, his eyes locking on mine. The complaint further alleges that you initiated these transfers, and that you have recently generated significant personal debt. They weren't just fast, they were thorough. They had built the entire narrative. My narrative. I had anticipated this. I had spent 48 hours with no money, but I had not been idle. This wasn't the emotional ambush at my apartment. This was my boardroom. I understand how this looks, I said, my voice steady. I placed my briefcase on the table and clicked it open. I had used my emergency cash to make copies at a print shop. I slid 3 folders across the polished wood. One for Sabrina, one for Bernard, one for Mr. Vance, I said. Folder 1, I said, is a copy of a police report I filed with the 18th precinct on Friday. It details a breaking and entering at my apartment. It names the man I saw in the security footage, my uncle, Malcolm Pierce. I nodded to Bernard. Folder 2 is a full report from all 3 credit bureaus detailing $60,000 in fraudulent debt opened in my name late last week using information I believe was stolen during that break-in. I am the victim of identity theft. I looked at Mr. Vance. Folder 3 is the key, I said. The complaint you received alleges my digital signature was used. That is correct. My signature key was on my personal laptop, which was stolen during the break-in. What you have in that folder is a preliminary forensic analysis from Rhea Coleman, an independent investigator. It shows the IP address used to authorize the transfers. It does not trace to me. It traces directly to the main office of Whitaker Builders, the company controlled by the man who filed the complaint against me, my father, Colin Whitaker. I had laid my hand out, the police report, the ID theft, the forensic proof of the forged signature. Mr. Vance looked at the IP report. He looked at the police report. He looked at me. He was unmoved. This is a comprehensive response, Ms. Parker, he said evenly. However, it is also a family matter, a very messy one, and the core facts remain. A complaint has been filed. Your name is on a court order, and your signature is at the center of a fraud investigation. Sabrina sighed, tapping her pen. Harper, you know our position. Stonehaven cannot be exposed to this kind of risk. The optics of a senior risk analyst being implicated, even by family. It's a material conflict, Harper, Keith said, adjusting his tie. You are now a compliance liability. Sabrina looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something. Regret, but it was gone. Replaced by the mask. We are placing you on temporary administrative leave, effective immediately, with pay, of course, pending the results of our own internal review. With pay. The pay that was currently being diverted into a frozen, court-seized account. The ultimate corporate insult. Bernard's office will cooperate fully with Mr. Vance. Vance's inquiry, she added. Keith cleared his throat. And per standard protocol, we will need to collect your building access card, your corporate cards, and all company-issued devices. They were taking my badge, my phone, my armor. I didn't flinch. I unclipped the badge from my belt. I placed it on the table. I slid my Stonehaven-issued laptop and phone next to it. A neat little pile of my professional life. Harper, Sabrina said as I stood up. I truly hope for your sake that you're telling the truth, but as of this moment, you are a significant risk to this firm. You can't be in the building. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked out of the conference room. An HR representative I'd never seen before was waiting to escort me to the elevator, not as a colleague, but as a threat. I was out on the street by 9:45 a.m. I was jobless in all but name. I was penniless. My reputation, my entire 15-year career had been hollowed out and set on fire, all before 10 in the morning. I spent the day in a Starbucks, nursing one coffee for 6 hours, using their public Wi-Fi. I was completely, totally isolated. That night, I called Ethan. Ethan Cole, my boyfriend of 8 months. He was an investment banker, a different world, and my one safe harbor from the Whitaker storm. He was my escape. I hadn't told him the details, and he hadn't asked. He was just normal. I needed normal. I needed an ally. He told me to come to his place. His apartment was a glass box overlooking the river, sterile and perfect. The rain, which had started that afternoon, was streaking down the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Harp," he said, kissing my cheek. The kiss felt off, perfunctory. "You look like hell. Rough day." "You have no idea," I said. I told him everything. The 9:15 a.m. confrontation with my family, the stolen laptop, the frame-up, the $60,000 in debt, and finally the meeting at Stonehaven, the suspension, the SRO. I laid it all out, the whole ugly, tangled mess. I was waiting for him to wrap his arms around me, to tell me we'd fight it, to be outraged for me. He was silent for a long time. He walked to his bar cart and poured himself a whiskey. The ice cracking in the glass. He didn't offer me one. He stared out at the rain. This is a lot, Harper. A real mess." He turned, not looking at me, but at the glass in his hand. Are you absolutely sure you didn't just get tangled up? You know, accidentally. Maybe you signed something you shouldn't have, and now you're trying to backtrack." The air left my lungs. It was a physical punch. Accidentally tangled up. He wasn't defending me. He wasn't even questioning my story. He was vetting me. He was assessing his own risk. His proximity to my fire. "What did you just ask me?" I said, my voice quiet. "I'm just saying," he said, holding up a defensive hand. "Your family they are complicated. We know that. Maybe you just got in over your head. Maybe the best thing to do is just negotiate. Pay a fine. Make it go away. This kind of thing," he gestured vaguely with his glass, "Harper sticks. An SRO investigation. It'll kill your career." He wasn't my ally. He was my father. Speaking in a different voice. "You think I did it?" I said. It wasn't a question. "I think it's a disaster," he countered. "And I think you need to contain it." His phone, sitting on the marble bar, buzzed. A text message. He glanced at it. I saw the name on the lock screen preview. Colin Whitaker. My heart didn't just sink, it evaporated. Colin Whitaker. "Why?" I said, my voice a hollow whisper. "Why?" I said, my voice a hollow whisper. "Is my father texting you?" Ethan's face went white. It was the most honest expression I'd seen on him all night. He snatched the phone, fumbling it. It's nothing. Business." He was asking about a deal. "Show me the phone, Ethan." "Harper, don't be dramatic. It's confidential." "Show me the phone." He knew. I walked over, picked up his phone, and unlocked it. I knew his passcode. 8 months of shared intimacy, 8 months of vulnerability. I opened his messages. The thread was right at the top. Colin Whitaker. It wasn't one text. It was a chain, long. I scrolled up and I scrolled and I scrolled. The texts didn't start last week. They didn't start last month. They started 6 months ago. 6 weeks after our first date. My eyes scanned the words, but my brain couldn't assemble them. Colin, good meeting at the gala. She seems to trust you. Let's keep this on track. Ethan, she's smart, Colin. But she's stressed. She mentioned the trust. I'm working the investment opportunity angle, Colin. She's protective of her access. You need to be subtle. The builder's expansion depends on this investment opportunity. He had pitched me 3 months ago, an off-market deal. He'd said it required a high-level signatory, someone with access to private funds. He had been fishing. He had been digging for my access codes, for my role in the trust. He wasn't my boyfriend. He was a corporate spy. My father hadn't just found him. My father had recruited him. Harper, Ethan started, his voice a pathetic plea. I looked up from the phone. The shock was so profound, it was almost silent. This was the second hit, the one that severed the last rope. My father hadn't just stolen my money and my job. He had actively, maliciously poisoned my personal life. He had found the one person I trusted and turned him into a tool. He approached you, I said. It was a statement. The Children's Hospital Gala, 6 months ago. You didn't meet me by chance. Ethan's face crumpled. The charm, the banker's confidence, all of it dissolved, leaving a weak, terrified man. He said it was an opportunity, he admitted, his voice cracking. A simple introduction. He said you were difficult. That the family needed a bridge. He said if I could facilitate, just get you to be more reasonable about the builder's expansion, he'd bring me in on the deal. A bridge? I repeated. The word tasted like ash. You were a bridge to exploit me. Harp, listen. It wasn't like that. He pleaded, grabbing my arm. I do like you. It's just, it got complicated. I pulled my arm away. You were right about one thing, Ethan, I said, picking up my coat. This does stick. I walked to the door. I left him standing in his glass box in the middle of his confession. I stepped out into the hallway, into the elevator, and out onto the street. The rain was torrential, a cold, stinging sheet, but it was clean. It was the only clean thing left. I had nowhere to go. My apartment wasn't safe. My bank accounts were empty. My job was gone. My relationship was a lie. I used the last of my emergency cash, a crumpled $100 bill, to check into an anonymous chain hotel off the highway. One night, I sat in the lobby, the smell of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner thick in the air. I logged onto their public Wi-Fi with my personal phone. I opened a new secure email address I had created over the weekend. There was one new message from the same anonymous number that had sent the flowchart. The subject, they aren't just framing you. They are finalizing the narrative. Attached was a single PDF. It wasn't a flowchart. It was a document on the official letterhead of my father's corporate law firm. The title read, Internal Memorandum, Re Harper Parker Mastermind. I opened it. My blood ran cold. It was the script. It was a work of devastating fiction. It painted me as a disgruntled, high-risk analyst at Stonehaven. It claimed I had the sophisticated knowledge to create the shells. That I used my insider status at a major firm to bypass the trust's controls. It claimed I had forged my family members' signatures. That I had generated the $60,000 in debt to cover my own extravagant lifestyle. It concluded that I had likely triggered the bank freeze myself in a panic, hoping to destroy the evidence and blame my family. It was airtight. It was clean. And it was the single most diabolical lie I had ever read. This was what they gave to Mr. Vance. This was what they gave to the judge. They weren't just defending themselves. They were actively, methodically prosecuting me. I sat there under the flickering fluorescent light of a cheap hotel lobby. A woman with no money, no job, and no allies. My father hadn't just burned the house down. He'd done it while holding a sign that pointed directly at me, screaming arsonist. I knew in that moment that Rhea Coleman's data and a local police report were nothing. This was a war. I was outgunned. I needed more than an investigator. I needed a specialist. I needed someone who didn't just understand finance, but forensics. My world had collapsed. It was time to find a new anchor. The hotel lobby at 3 a.m. was a vacuum. The smell of bleach and old coffee was suffocating. I had used the last of my wallet cash for that room, the one where my life had finally and completely cratered. But I was not a fool. My grandfather, Harlan, the man who had started this entire poisoned legacy, had taught me one thing that mattered. A good risk analyst doesn't just have a plan B. He told me they have a go bag, a complete exit. Money, identity, transport. You never, ever let them trap you. My go bag wasn't a bag. It was a safe deposit box at a tiny, independent credit union across town. One that didn't sync with the major banking networks, one that I paid for in cash, once a year. I spent the last of my pocket change on a bus ride. At 7 a.m. When the bank opened, I walked in. The box contained exactly what I had placed in it 5 years prior, $12,000 in bundled $100 bills, a new, sealed burner phone, and a high-quality, technically legal driver's license with my photo, but a different name. I walked out into the grey morning, a ghost with a bankroll. First, a new hotel, a mid-range anonymous business suite, the kind that blends into the concrete of any city. Checking in, I said to the front desk. Reservation for Parkson, Harper Parkson. The room was beige and smelled of nothing. It was perfect. I unwrapped the burner phone, plugged it in, and dialed the only number I had memorized that wasn't on a single one of my compromised devices. It rang 3 times. You've got Torres. Her voice was a high-speed engine, clipped, caffeinated, and exactly as I remembered from our all-nighters in the university's computer lab. Madeline, it's Harper Parker. A beat of silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Parker, holy hell. It's been what, 5 years? Last I heard, you were some kind of big shot VP at Stonehaven, swimming in data. I was, I said, the words tasting like ash. Right now, I'm the primary suspect in a fraud investigation. My assets are frozen. My family is trying to frame me as a mastermind. My boyfriend was a corporate spy, and my uncle just burglarized my apartment. Other than that, things are great. Another pause, shorter this time. Okay, that's a hell of an opening. Way better than how's the weather. Where are you? Hotel, alias burner phone, Madeline. I need a forensic accountant. You don't need a forensic accountant, Harper, she shot back. I could already hear the rapid click-clack of her mechanical keyboard. You need a goddamn miracle worker, and I charge triple for miracles, especially when the client is this hot. I have $12,000 in cash, I said. And I have the raw data. Rhea Coleman's preliminary findings, but they stole the hard copy and twisted it. Rhea's good. She's a bloodhound. But she finds the asterisk what star. I find the asterisk how asterisk and the asterisk why star. I build the chain of custody. You need a chain, Parker. Right now, you're just the last link in theirs. Text me the address. And Harper. Yeah? Don't order room service. Madeline Torres was the antithesis of my polished corporate world. She arrived 2 hours later in faded jeans and a hoodie, carrying 2 heavy black Pelican cases. She looked like she was here to defuse a bomb. In a way, she was right, she said, dropping the cases on the desk. Let's see the body. I logged into the hotel Wi-Fi after she'd routed it through a multi-layered VPN and accessed the secure cloud server where Ria had stored her original, untouched data. This, Madeline said, plugging in a series of external hard drives, is what we call a reverse legal heist. They built a narrative. They used your identity to create fake debt. Then used that debt as a motive to get a judge to freeze your life. They are fast, but they are sloppy. We are going to build a better narrative, the true one, and we are going to build it so tight, Madeline declared, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The U.S. Attorney's office could drive a truck through it, and it wouldn't wobble. For the next 12 hours, the hotel room became a war room. We didn't talk about Ethan's betrayal. We didn't talk about my father's cruelty. We talked about timestamps, hashes, and ledgers. We standardize everything, Madeline dictated, her fingers a blur. Now, chain of custody is king. They'll argue you doctored this data. So we take every file Ria found, the bank logs, the wire transfers, the IP data, and we run a full cryptographic hash on every single one, an MD5, a SHA-256. We are creating a unique digital fingerprint for every piece of evidence, as it exists right now. This meant that the files we were about to analyze were provably the exact files Ria had pulled, untampered with. My father's legal team, the one that drafted the mastermind memo, wouldn't be able to claim we were the ones faking the data. Next, we built the timeline. Timestamps are your alibi, Madeline said, her screen splitting into 4 windows. The signature forgeries, when did they happen? We cross-referenced the IP logs from Whittaker Builders, the ones proving the forgeries came from my father's office, with my Stonehaven calendar, which I still had access to on my personal non-comp. Okay, I said, reading. August 4th, 10:02 a.m., a transfer of $80,000 was authorized. At that exact time, I was in a mandatory risk assessment meeting with my entire department and 2 VPs from legal. I have the minutes. Click-clack. Documented, Madeline murmured. August 10th, 2:34 p.m., I continued. A $120,000 authorization. At that time, I was in the air. On a flight to Chicago. I have the boarding pass in my email. Click-clack. Alibi established. They weren't just sloppy, Harper. They were arrogant. They didn't even check your schedule. Then Madeline went deeper, past Ria's findings. Okay, so Ria found the first layer, Pierce Strategic and Lawson Holdings. Cute, simple nepotism. But where did the money go from there? The amounts going into Whittaker Builders don't match the amounts coming out of the trust. She pulled up the flowchart, the one the anonymous texter had sent me. This is our map. Let's verify. Her screen became a dizzying web of arrows. It's a classic rinse cycle. Money leaves the trust, goes to the first shells, Pierce and Lawson. They skim, then pass the bulk to Whittaker Builders. But Whittaker Builders is a sieve, it's bleeding cash. So where did the profit go? She followed the money out of Whittaker Builders. Okay. Builders paid 2 new shells, Harbor Management and Cuyahoga Capital. And those 2, paid 2 more shells. 6 shells. Harper, it's a 6-shell game designed to break the chain. And from the final shells. The final beneficiaries, she whispered. She pulled up a list of outgoing transfers from shell number 6. And it's not just your family, she said, pointing to the list. The list read, Colin Whittaker, father, Malcolm Pierce, uncle, Brent Lawson, cousin, Ronan Vale, Jasper King, Delia Mart. Those aren't family, I said. Madeline was already running them. Ronan Vale, no public profile. Jasper King, nothing. Delia Mart. Ah. A photo popped up. A woman in a sharp suit cutting a ribbon. Delia Mart, Madeline said, her fingers flying as she pulled public records. She is a municipal zoning commissioner. The anonymous diagram, the political contributions, it was all true. This is bigger than the trust, I said. They are laundering money to bribe a commissioner. For what? For Whittaker Builders, Madeline said, her fingers flying as she pulled public records. Your father's company has been trying to get a zoning variance for a massive waterfront development for 2 years. It's been blocked. Delia Mart sits on that zoning board. She then pulled the tax records for Whittaker Builders. And here's the kicker. The company has claimed a net loss for 3 straight years. Massive 7-figure losses. But she pulled up property records. Your father bought a boat. Your uncle bought a condo in Florida. All cash. Brent Lawson has a new Maserati. The company is failing, but the executives are getting richer. They are siphoning money from the trust via the shells, declaring the company a loss to avoid taxes, and using the laundered cash to pay themselves under the table and to bribe officials. It's not just fraud, Harper, Madeline said, leaning back from the screen. It's tax evasion. It's public corruption. It's conspiracy. This isn't a family squabble anymore. This is a federal case. The political donation angle, that's the trigger. The trigger. That's FBI territory, I said. We have them. We have the whole beautiful, rotten structure mapped out, as if on cue. My burner phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize, but the tone, the sickly sweet smell of emotional manipulation, was unmistakable. Harper, it's your mother. Please, I know you're angry. Your father, he's not thinking clearly. This has all gone too far. Can we just talk? Just you and me. Please, darling, the text continued, just explain this to me. The peacemaker. The I'm just a confused woman act. Don't answer it, Madeline said, not looking up. It's a trap. They want to know where you are. They want to serve you papers. I know, I said. A cold, hard idea forming. But she just gave me an opening. I thought about the mastermind memo, the story they had built, the $60,000 in fraudulent debt, 3 cards, Capital One, Amex, Chase. She's not a co-conspirator, I said. She's an enabler. She's weak, and I'm going to use that. I texted my mother back, I'm scared. I don't know who to trust. Meet me at the Art Institute Cafe. 1 hour. Come alone, please. Mom, I'm so scared. The Art Institute, Madeline said, a slow grin spreading across her face. Public cameras everywhere. Terrible acoustics. Perfect. I'm going to set the hook, I said. I grabbed my bag. Keep a line open. I'm recording audio from my phone, bouncing it straight to your server. I was in the cafe 40 minutes later. It was loud, the high ceilings echoing with the chatter of tourists and students. I sat in a corner, a cup of tea untouched, my phone on the table recording. My mother, Evelyn, rushed in, looking genuinely distraught. She was wearing her worried cashmere. Harper. Oh, thank God, she breathed, sliding into the chair. It's a nightmare. Your father. He's trying to protect the business. He framed me, I said, cutting her off. My voice was flat. Malcolm, and Brent, they stole from the fund, and they are trying to put me in prison for it. No, darling. It's not like that, she insisted, her hands fluttering. It's just complex business. You wouldn't understand. He just needs you to stop this. Stop the audit. Tell the bank it was a mistake. She was sticking to the script, the soft negotiation, the follow-up to the 9:15 a.m. ambush. As she was talking, I saw him, a man 2 tables over, partially hidden by a pillar. He wasn't drinking his coffee. He was holding his phone, aimed at our table. He was taking pictures. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just sent my mother to talk. They had sent a tale, to document, to get a photo of me. The fugitive meeting them, twisted as me attempting to coerce them. I let a tremor enter my voice. He's destroying my life, Mom, I whispered. My job is gone. My accounts are frozen. I'm ruined. They even maxed out my Citibank card, the $20,000 one. I just got the alert this morning. I'm drowning. I watched her face. Evelyn's expression, which had been a mask of practiced sympathy, flickered. Confusion. Citibank, she said, frowning. No, darling. That's not right. There wasn't a Citibank card. She leaned in, lowering her voice. It was the Capital One and the Chase Sapphire and the Amex. Your father was very specific about the debt, he said. Gotcha. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with the sudden, terrible realization of what she'd just said. Your father was very specific. There was no Citibank card. I had invented it. It was a piece of bait, and she, in her desperate attempt to correct me, had just admitted to having full, detailed, specific knowledge of the $60,000 fraudulent frame-up. She wasn't a peacemaker. She wasn't an innocent bystander. She was an active co-conspirator. I stood up. The man with the camera scrambled, trying to get a clear shot. Thank you, Mom, I said, my voice as cold and hard as the marble floor. You've just explained everything I need to know. Harper, what did I say? You said your piece, I said, and I walked away. I left her sitting there, her face a mask of dawning horror. I walked past her photographer, out of the museum, and disappeared into the anonymous afternoon crowd. My burner phone buzzed. It was a text from Madeline. Audio is crystal clear, all the way to my server. She named the cards. She named your father. She confirmed the conspiracy. We just added conspiracy to commit wire fraud to the indictment. That, Harper, is the ball game. I walked back into the beige hotel room. The recording of my mother's voice secured on Madeline's server. The small tactical victory at the Art Institute felt good, but it was just one domino. My mother's admission of the fraudulent cards was a crack in the wall, not a breach. Ball game, Madeline said again, not looking up from her 3 screens. She had the audio file open, running it through a filter to clean up the cafe's ambient clatter. Evelyn Whitaker, a full-throated, non-coerced admission of specific knowledge of a multi-state wire fraud operation. She just graduated from enabler to co-conspirator. She's a co-conspirator who will plead ignorance, I countered, sitting on the edge of the stiff bed. She'll say I confused her, that she was just repeating what she'd heard. We still have the mastermind memo. They have a clean, simple narrative, I'm the rogue analyst. We have a complex, messy pile of data. Then we need something cleaner, Madeline said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. We need to get inside their planning. We need to find the intent. We need the moment they flip the switch from covering their asses to framing you. They are not going to monologue for us. She paused, a predatory focus in her eyes. They might have already. I've been running a vulnerability scan on the trust's domain, I said. The one Brent Lawson set up. The community college accountant. I paused. The one his sloppy. He linked the trust's main email, that info at address, to a cheap third-party cloud storage service, probably for backing up receipts or applications, but he authenticated the storage with the email account. Meaning he used an open-off. Madeline said, her voice quickening. He left a metadata back door wide open in the public-facing Contact Us form. I can spoof an authentication token. I don't need to hack the cloud. Harper, Madeline said, a new drive icon appearing on her desktop. The cloud's own security protocol is about to invite me in as a trusted user. A black terminal window opened on her screen. She typed a few lines of code. It took less than 90 seconds. A flicker, an authentication handshake, and a new drive icon appeared on her desktop. We're in, she whispered. It wasn't spreadsheets. It wasn't applications for tuition. It was audio files. Hundreds of them. File names. Just dates and timestamps. 2024-10-14_30 and 2024-10-12_11:5_M4A. My God, I breathed, moving closer. Madeline, these go back 18 months. He must have had an auto-sync setting turned on. A phone, a tablet, something was automatically backing up its voice memos to this drive. He's been creating an archive of his own crimes. She clicked on a file from 2 days ago. The audio was tinny, muffled, a voice I knew. Move on the accounts now. Freeze her out before she can, my father Colin's voice said. She clicked another from a week earlier. The sound was different, clearer, as if the phone was on a table in a quiet room. And the voice. It was thin, papery, but laced with the steel I remembered from my grandfather. I am recording this. My name is Matilda Whitaker. I am recording this because Colin and Malcolm are thieves, and they are going to try and hurt my granddaughter. I am recording this to protect Harper. I grabbed the back of the chair, my knuckles white. Matilda, it's Grandma. It wasn't Brent's phone. It was hers. Brent, the idiot, must have set up her phone years ago and linked her backups to the main family cloud, never segmenting the permissions. She had been recording them for 18 months, I whispered. She knew. When I saw her at the Willows, she told me he was a gambler. She knew everything. She didn't just know, Madeline said, her voice hushed with awe. Harper, she was building your entire case. Look at this. She pointed to a file dated exactly 2 weeks ago. The day of the Lake Rowan meeting. I heard the faint, distant sound of my own voice. 68,000. It just seemed high. Then the audio shifted. It became clearer, louder, as if the phone had been left on the table after I had walked out of the room. She's onto it, my father, Colin's voice, was a low growl. Brent, you goddamn idiot. Administrative retainers, Brent's voice, high and whining. You might as well have labeled it theft fund. How was I supposed to know she'd look? She never looks. She's too busy. Then Uncle Malcolm, it doesn't matter. She's suspicious. Colin, the zoning vote for the waterfront is in 3 weeks. We need the final payment for Delia Mart. We need another $100,000 now. And Harper, my father asked. She's busy, Malcolm said. Just push it through as payroll cover. She won't notice one more wire. A sharp, panicked voice. Brent, it's too late. She asked for the itemized invoices. She knows. Colin, a voice said, filled with dread, she's going to find us. A heavy, terrible silence filled the recording. I could feel the cold dread from that lodge room seeping into my hotel room. 2 weeks later, finally, my father's voice. It was different. It was the cold, quiet voice of the man who cleans up problems. The voice Matilda had described. Then we cut her out, he said. We remove her. We trigger the key person clause, restructure the board. We'll say she stepped down voluntarily. Make it look like she left. And then Matilda's voice, shaking with a furious, frail power. You will not, Colin. You will not. You are talking about your own daughter. You are talking about framing her. Mother, stay out of this, Colin snapped. I'm doing what Harlan taught me, Matilda retorted. I'm protecting this family. You're protecting yourself, she shrieked. I will not let you get away. I will not let you frame that child. I won't. The recording clicked off. I was shaking so hard I had to sit down. The text, I said, the 7:43 p.m. text. Step away. That was it. That was the plan. They were going to push me out and then discover the fraud themselves. But I moved too fast. I triggered the freeze before they could get their story straight. And that, Madeline said, is when they panicked. That's when they escalated to the burglary, the credit cards, the mastermind memo. They were improvising. Madeline was already opening other files. There's more here, she said, a recording of a conference call with their lawyer from last week. They are planning the trust restructure. They are talking about diluting your donor stake by pumping in black money from an offshore account, pushing you below the 30% threshold to void your supervisory rights. It was all there. An 18-month meticulous audiovisual archive of their conspiracy. The motive, the intent, the act, the cover-up. As Madeline was dragging the entire audio archive into a new encrypted secure bundle, my burner phone buzzed. A new email forwarded from my anonymous benefactor. It was from my father's lawyer. It wasn't a plan. It was an attack. A formal cease and desist sent to my old, compromised personal email. This is it, I said, my voice hollow. It's the mastermind memo, fully weaponized. I read it aloud. It hereby accuses Ms. Harper Parker of corporate espionage against Whitaker Builders, willful embezzlement, and manipulation of fiduciary accounts. We have obtained evidence, a digital signature, which our independent experts have verified as originating from Ms. Parker's known devices. We demand you cease all contact. Attached was a PDF. Signature verification PDF. I opened it. It was my digital signature, the one they had stolen, next to a verified stamp from some pay-for-play expert they'd hired. They are not just defending, Madeline said, her voice grim. They are attacking. They are actively building a parallel prosecution. They are trying to discredit you as a witness before you can even open your mouth. Madeline leaned back from her screens. She began to work with a terrifying, silent efficiency, dragging files, creating new folders. Okay, this is no longer a defense. This is a prosecution, she said. Ours. She began to organize the data into clean, numbered bundles. Bundle 1, the financials. She dragged in RIA's initial report, the wire transfers, the 6-shell flowchart, the tax returns for Whitaker Builders, and the payment logs to Delia Mart. Bundle 2, the frame-up. She dragged in my police report for the burglary, the credit reports for the $60,000 in fraudulent debt, the mastermind memo. Bundle 3, the conspiracy. She dragged in the audio file from the Art Institute. Evelyn Whitaker admitting specific knowledge of the fraudulent cards. And Bundle 4, she said, her voice dropping, the nail in the coffin. She dragged the entire folder of Matilda's audio recordings. 18 months of premeditated conspiracy to commit wire fraud, tax evasion, public corruption, and if we play this right, a full-blown RICO case. She leaned back. I'm a forensic accountant, Harper. I'm the one who builds the bomb. I'm not the one who pushes the button. You're done with me. You need a prosecutor. A prosecutor. I said, I'm a penniless fugitive. You don't need the prosecutor. You need a prosecutor. A private one. Someone who takes this bundle, bypasses the local DA, who your father has probably been donating to for years, and walks it directly into the U.S. Attorney's office. And I know exactly who. She pulled up a contact on her phone. Sharon Davis. Sharon Davis, Madeline said, is who you call when you want to put men like your father in prison for a very, very long time. She's a former federal prosecutor from the Southern District of New York. She eats white-collar criminals for breakfast, and she hates arrogant patriarchs. My hands, which had been shaking, were suddenly still. Make the call. Madeline dialed and put the phone on speaker. Torres, a new voice said, sharp, no nonsense, like snapping a ruler. Sharon, it's Madeline. I have a client for you. A real one. How real? RICO, public corruption, multi-state wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, and a frame-up that's so clean it's beautiful. A pause. Go on. Client is Harper Parker. Senior risk at Stonehaven. Family trust. Father, uncle, cousin are the perpetrators. They've already framed her, frozen her assets, gotten her suspended from her job, and reported her to FINRA. They are trying to bury her. And the evidence. Sharon's voice was sharp. I have, Madeline said, a slow smile spreading across her face, 18 months of audio recordings from the matriarch of the family detailing the entire conspiracy from inception to the cover-up. I have the full financial trace from the shells to a municipal zoning commissioner. I have the audio of the client's mother admitting to the frame-up. I've got it all hashed, packaged, and ready to go. The silence on the line was profound. It was the sound of a shark smelling blood. I've just cleared my afternoon, Sharon Davis said. Send me the files and get your client here now. Madeline looked at me. She's in. Tell Sharon we are on our way. I said, standing up, the fog of the last few days finally lifting. The path was clear. But first, I said, we have one more stop. Sharon is the criminal complaint. That's the long game. But I am not going to be a penniless, jobless fugitive while I wait. My father used an ex-parte court order to freeze my life. I am going to use a better one to get it back. I looked at the mountain of evidence Madeline had prepared. We are going to find a judge. We are going to file an emergency order to vacate the freeze on my accounts, citing the evidence of fraud and identity theft. And we are going to get a temporary restraining order against my father, my uncle, and my cousin. We are going to hit them on the civil front while Sharon is hitting them on the criminal front. That's bold, Madeline said, going after them on two fronts at once. They set the rules, I said, picking up my bag. They wanted a war. They just didn't realize I was the one with the air support. Sharon Davis was not a lawyer, she was a demolition expert. Our meeting, held in a shielded conference room her firm kept for high-sensitivity clients, was short, brutal, and devoid of emotion. She absorbed Madeline's entire data package, the 30-year pattern of fraud from Nora's ledgers, and the raw, intimate betrayal of Matilda's tapes, with the dispassionate focus of a surgeon reviewing an MRI. They built a box to frame you in, she said, tapping the mastermind memo on the table. We are going to build a coffin. The offensive began not in days, but in hours. Sharon launched the three-pronged attack I had envisioned, but with a speed and ferocity that left me breathless. Prong 1, the civil strike. She filed the emergency motion to vacate the freeze on my assets. The filing was a work of brutalist legal art. It didn't just ask, it demanded. The exhibits were attached like grenades. Exhibit A, my police report for the burglary by Malcolm Pierce. Exhibit B, the credit reports detailing the $60,000 in fraudulent debt filed under identity theft. Exhibit C, a certified transcript of the audio recording from the Art Institute where my mother, Evelyn, explicitly named the exact credit cards used in the frame-up. Sharon's argument was simple. The plaintiff, my father, had fabricated the entire premise for the freeze. He hadn't just misled the court, he had committed perjury. We demanded an immediate reversal and sanctions. Prong 2, the information war. Simultaneously, Sharon's office launched a paper-based shock and awe campaign. Legal notices, delivered by courier, landed on the doorsteps of every member of the Whittaker family. But they were not all the same. Sharon had drafted two versions. Letter A, sent to the extended family, my younger cousins, my Aunt Nora, was a masterpiece of curated truth. It was a notification to potential witnesses. It calmly explained that I, Harper Parker, had been the victim of a coordinated, malicious campaign of fraud and identity theft. It stated that the Family Support Trust had been compromised by its administrators. It advised them that as potential beneficiaries who had also been harmed, they should not speak to Colin, Malcolm, Evelyn, or Brent, and to retain their own counsel. It wasn't an attack. It was a lifeboat. Letter B, sent to the four conspirators, was a declaration of war. It was a demand for preservation of evidence and notice of impending legal action. It informed them of the civil suit for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. It explicitly forbade them from deleting, altering, or destroying any physical or digital records, including but not limited to emails, text messages, hard drives, server logs, and personal accounting notes. The effect was instantaneous. The Whittaker's group chat, which I still monitored, exploded. It was a digital civil war. My Aunt Nora's quiet, "What is this?" was met with a barrage of panicked messages from Brent's wife. Cousins were asking why their letters were different. The unified front of the Whittaker family, the one that had so easily exiled me, shattered in less than an hour. I stayed silent. My phone was on my desk, buzzing with their infighting. But I was no longer a part of the family chat. I was a plaintiff. My work was being done by Sharon. Prong 3, the criminal payload. Sharon did not trust the local judiciary. Your father's company has been building this town for 30 years, Harper, she'd said. Judges, district attorneys, they all eat at the same golf club. We are not playing his home game. She bundled the evidence. Bundle 1, the state-level crimes, the identity theft, the $60,000 in fraudulent cards, the bank fraud. That she sent to the state district attorney's office. Let them chew on the easy stuff, she said. Bundle 2, the payload. This one contained Madeline's flowchart of the 6 shells. It contained the payments to Delia Mart, the zoning commissioner. It contained the anonymous tipster's evidence of illegal PAC contributions, and it contained the crown jewels, Matilda's 18 months of audio tapes proving a long-term, premeditated conspiracy. This bundle did not go to the state. Sharon, leveraging her former status as a federal prosecutor, hand-delivered it to the head of the Public Integrity Section of the U.S. Attorney's Office. She didn't report a theft, she reported a criminal enterprise. The silence that followed was terrifying. It was the silence of a deep-sea sonar ping sent into the abyss, waiting for a return. The return came 2 days later, and not from the direction I expected. My burner phone, the Harper Park Sun phone, rang with a video call. It was my cousin Tyler, my uncle's son, a 20-year-old college kid. His sister Amanda was next to him. They looked like they hadn't slept. Harper, Tyler said, his voice cracking. We got your lawyer's letter. We didn't know what to believe. Dad, I mean my dad, he corrected himself, Uncle Malcolm said you were, that you were stealing from Grandma. And then Amanda cut in, her voice small. Uncle Carl came over. Uncle Carl, my mother's brother, the harmless one, the insurance salesman. He gave us this, Tyler said, his hand shaking. He held a single typed sheet of paper up to the camera. He said it was a statement. He said that if anyone, a lawyer, a reporter, the police, anyone, asked us what happened, we should just read this. He said it was to keep the family story straight. I read the words on the screen. It was a script, a watered-down, folksy version of the mastermind memo. Harper was always stressed about money. She talked about how easy it would be to move things around. She was jealous of her father's success. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a frame-up. This was witness tampering. They were actively scripting the entire family. Keep that, I said, my voice hard. Do not lose it. Put it in a plastic bag. Do not touch it again. Send me a photo now. They had just handed me the missing piece. The proof of a cover-up, after the legal notices had been sent. The second call came an hour later. Aunt Nora. Her voice was thin, like old paper. Harper, I received the letter. I've been dreading this day for 30 years. Aunt Nora, I'm at the shop, she said. She owned a small, struggling flower shop downtown. Can you come? Don't use the front door. I met her in the back room, the air thick with the smell of lilies and damp earth. Nora was my grandfather's sister, the last of his generation besides Matilda. She was the family's quiet observer. She didn't speak. She just pointed to a dusty metal safe under the potting bench. She spun the combination and pulled out a heavy canvas-bound box. I was Harlan's first bookkeeper, she whispered, her hands trembling as she untied the string. Back before he was Harlan, before Colin took over. Your father, he was always good at making numbers do what he wanted. I never trusted his magic. She opened the box. Inside were 4 hardbound ledgers, the old kind with green and red columns. They were meticulous, handwritten. I kept my own books, Harper, she said. He never knew. This is the real history. This is where Harlan's first debts came from. The dark partners Matilda told you about. And this, she pointed to a series of entries from 1994. This is the first shell company your father ever created. North Cuyahoga Holdings. He used it to fix your grandfather's gambling debts. He's been running the same play, the same system for 30 years. This was it. This was the genesis. This wasn't just a case of fraud. It was a 30-year pattern of criminal activity. This was the enterprise in racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. This was the RICO case. I took the ledgers back to Madeline, who was now operating on a permanent retainer from a new, clean bank account Sharon had established for me. When Madeline saw the ledgers, she didn't cheer. She went completely silent. She just began to scan page by page. This is it, Harper, she said, her voice hushed. This is the Rosetta Stone. We can now tie the methodology from 30 years ago directly to the methodology used on the trust. It's the same signature, the same playbook. We have them. We had the full, complete evidence package. Ria's report had shown what happened. Madeline's forensics had shown how it happened. Matilda's tapes had shown the conspiracy. Evelyn's admission had proven the frame-up. The cousin's script had proven the witness tampering. And now Nora's ledgers had proven the history. It was a multi-generational criminal enterprise. We sent the scanned ledgers and the photo of Tyler's script straight to Sharon, who forwarded them to the U.S. attorney. Then the final domino fell. My anonymous texter sent one last message, they are burning it. Whitaker Builders. Now, 2 shredding trucks just backed up to the dock. They are panicking. They had received our preservation of evidence notice, and their response was to light a bonfire. They are destroying evidence, I told Sharon on the phone. They are obstructing. They are beautiful, Sharon replied, a cold smile in her voice. They just turned a civil spoliation claim into a federal felony. I'm calling the Bureau. They are ours. The next call I received was from the FBI. Agent Concado, his voice was all business. Ms. Parker, we have them destroying physical files. We've confirmed it with satellite surveillance, but the digital evidence, Brent Lawson is likely wiping his servers as we speak. We have enough to indict, but juries like a confession. What do you mean? I asked. They are cornered, Concado said. Your father, your uncle, their lawyers are going to tell them the only way out is to cut a deal with you, to silence you. They are going to reach out, probably in the next 24 hours, and offer you a settlement. A cold dread settled in my stomach. We want you to take the meeting, Concado said. You want me to what? We want to put a wire on you. We want you in a room with them. We've heard your grandmother's tapes. We know how they talk. We want them to admit it. We want to hear your father, in his own voice, admit to the frame-up. We want to hear them offer you blood money to make this go away. I hung up and immediately called Sharon. She was furious. Absolutely not. It's cowboy nonsense. It's inadmissible if they screwed up, and it's dangerous. These men are watching their lives implode. Your uncle has already committed breaking and entering. Your cousin Brent is looking at 10 years. Desperate men are not predictable. We have enough. Do we? I asked, staring out the window of my new sterile hotel room. We have enough to put them in a courtroom, Sharon. But they'll fight. They'll use that mastermind memo. They'll paint me as a liar. They'll say Matilda was senile. They'll say Nora is vindictive. They will tear my life apart on the stand. I thought about Ethan's betrayal. I thought about Sabrina, at Stonehaven asking for my badge. I thought about my mother's weak, calculated lies. They started this by trying to kick me out of a group text, I said. They escalated it at my apartment. They finalized it at my job. This has to end where it started, with them and me. Harper, this is a bad idea, Sharon warned. They've been hiding behind lawyers and memos and manipulated family members, I said, my voice hardening. It's time for them to face me. I'm taking the meeting. I'm wearing the wire. The call came just as Agent Concado had predicted. It was my father. His voice was not the rage-filled thunder of my apartment, nor the cold hatred from my office. It was a new voice, conciliatory, wounded, the voice of a patriarch forced to sue for peace. Harper, he said, the sound of a man trying to sound reasonable. This has gone too far. All of it. Your mother is a wreck. This isn't us. We are a family. We don't do this. You did, I said. It's a misunderstanding, he insisted. The word misunderstanding practically vibrating with legal coaching. A terrible, complex misunderstanding. Can you just come to the house, Harper? No lawyers, just us. Let us explain, please. No lawyers, just us. The perfect trap. I'll be there, I said, tonight. The setup was cold, impersonal, and humiliating. An FBI technician, a woman who didn't introduce herself, fitted the digital recorder. It wasn't a bulky wire. It was a series of small, Flat sensors adhered to my skin beneath my clothes, with a transmitter the size of a credit card in my pocket. The audio will stream directly to us, Concardo said from the passenger seat of the unmarked van parked a block away from the house. Your primary objective is to get them to acknowledge the frame-up, the credit cards, the mastermind memo. Your secondary is to get them to offer you a settlement, a bribe. Do not, under any circumstances, solicit one. Just let them talk. We are listening to every word. And if it goes bad? I asked, my voice flat. We are 3 minutes out, he said, which wasn't an answer. He handed me a simple button-shaped device. This is your panic button. You press it, we are coming in. Do not press it unless you are in physical danger. Are we clear? I nodded. I walked up the stone pathway of the Maple Crest house, the home I had grown up in. The porch light was on. It looked welcoming. It smelled like my mother's roses in the damp, rich earth of the suburbs. It smelled like a lie. My mother, Evelyn, opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked, for all the world, like a victim. Harper. Oh, thank God, she whispered, pulling me into a hug. I did not return it. The sensors beneath my shirt felt like ice. I walked into the living room. It was exactly as Concardo had said. The war room. My father, Colin, stood by the fireplace, the picture of the concerned patriarch. Uncle Malcolm was on the sofa, his bulk filling the cushion, his leg bouncing with a nervous, kinetic energy. And sitting in the armchair, sweating through his polo shirt, was Brent, the rat, the accountant. He had a thick, leather-bound folder on his lap. Thank you for coming, Harper, my father said, his voice laced with a practiced, weary sincerity. I know this has been difficult. We wanted to clear the air. I stood in the center of the room. I did not sit. I did not accept the drink my mother offered. I was not a guest. I was an asset. You called me, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. The mic was hot. You said this was all a misunderstanding. I'm here. So, convince me. I had given them the floor. I had given them the rope. My father, Colin, visibly relaxed. This was his territory. He smiled, a sad, fatherly smile. Harper, you've spent so long in the corporate world. I think you've forgotten how family businesses run. You see fraud, we see operations, liquidity management. He began to pace, warming to his script. Are the lines blurry between the trust and the builders? And in personal accounts, of course. It's a family. It's all family money. We were just moving it to where it was needed most, to protect the business, to protect all of us. It's all perfectly legal business structuring. It was a beautiful, vague admission of commingling funds. It was a good start. Uncle Malcolm, never one for subtlety, grunted from the couch. He leaned forward. Look, enough of this. Your father is right. We are family. This bank, this audit, that's the enemy, not us. He pointed a thick finger at me. You created this mess when you pulled your money out. You fix it. You call the bank tomorrow. You tell them you made a mistake. You turn your contribution back on, and we all, as a family, handle the audit together. Kincaid's voice was a whisper in my earbud, so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it. Asterisk solicitation of conspiracy. Keep going. Asterisk. My mother chimed in. That's all we are asking, darling. Just make it stop. Then the main event. Brent. He stood up, his hands shaking, and placed the leather folder on the coffee table. He slid it toward me. It's simple, Harper, he said, his voice slick with sweat. Your father's right. It's just a paperwork issue. The bank just needs to see that we are all on the same page. I didn't move. Open it, he urged. I opened the folder. Inside were 3 pristine documents drafted by my father's lawyers, and a pen. The header on the first page read, Retroactive Authorization and Confirmation of Transactions. I read the first line, I, Harper R. Parker, do hereby confirm and ratify that all transactions, transfers, and disbursements from the Whitaker Family Support Trust from January 1st, 2 years prior to the present date, were made with my full knowledge and authorization. It was the trap, the physical, tangible proof of my own execution. If I signed this, I wasn't just an accomplice. I was the mastermind. I was taking credit for every forged signature, every stolen dollar, every ghost invoice. This was the document they would use to destroy me forever. This was what they had failed to get at my apartment. I looked up from the paper. I looked at Brent, at Malcolm, at my mother, at my father. They were all watching me, expectant, hopeful. They had no idea what was coming. Authorize what, exactly? I asked. The air in the room changed. What, my father said. Which transactions? I asked, my voice as cold and clear as the Art Institute cafe. There are so many. I just want to be specific. Are we talking about the $60,000 in fraudulent credit cards you opened in my name? The Amex, the Chase, the Capital One. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She remembered. Or, I continued, are we talking about the 6 shell companies? Pierce Strategic, Lawson Holdings, Harbor Management, Cuyahoga Capital, and the other 2. The ones you used to launder the money. My father's face went from pale to grey. Malcolm started to rise from the couch. Maybe you mean the payments to Delia Mart. I pressed on, my voice rising. Is that the business structuring you're talking about? Dad, my father whispered, his face a mask of disbelief. Or, I said, driving the final nail, are we just authorizing the script? The one Uncle Carl is handing out to the cousins. The one that paints me as a jealous, unstable thief. Are we authorizing the illegal campaign contributions? The tax evasion? I looked at Brent, who was now visibly shaking, his skin ashen. Tell me, Brent, what exactly am I signing for? The room exploded. You little, Malcolm roared, lunging forward. Enough, my father screamed, cutting him off. But the panic was loose. The script was gone. This was real. Brent, the weakest link, the man who had been sweating since I walked in, finally completely shattered. He looked at my father, his eyes wide with pure animal terror. She knows, Colin. She knows. What? She knows about the Cayman account. How could she? How could she know about the $7 million from last year? She knows. We are done. We are done. He had said it. The magic words. An offshore account. A specific, massive number. An admission of guilt so profound, so total. It sucked the air from the room. My father's face crumpled. It wasn't rage. It was defeat. My mother started to sob, a dry, racking sound. A single, clear voice in my earbud, Kincaid. We got it, Miss Parker. It's done. We have it all. Get out now. I stood up. My hands were perfectly steady. I need to use the restroom, I said, my voice a passable imitation of someone in shock. I need to think about this. I turned, not looking back. I walked out of the living room, down the familiar hallway, past the photos of my childhood, of my college graduation, of a family that had never existed. I did not go to the restroom. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch. I walked down the stone path, onto the perfectly green lawn, and I waited for a full 10 seconds. The only sound was the chirping of crickets. Then the street erupted. Two black, windowless vans, running without lights, screeched to a halt at the curb. The side doors slid open, and the tactical team moved. A dark, silent, efficient machine. They were past me before I could blink, flooding up the walkway, and through the front door I had left open. FBI. Hands in the air. Hands in the air, on your knees now. The screaming started, not the angry, indignant screaming of the living room. This was a new sound. A sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Concado and another agent were suddenly at my side, creating a shield with their bodies. Stay here, Ms. Parker. You're safe. I watched them bring my Uncle Malcolm out, his hands cuffed behind his back, his face purple with rage, still screaming obscenities. I watched them bring Brent out. He wasn't walking, he was being dragged, weeping, his legs having given out. I watched them bring my mother out, cuffed, her face a grotesque mask of shock, her wails echoing in the quiet suburban night. And finally, I watched them bring my father out. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't crying. He just looked old, beaten. He walked out in cuffs. And as they put him in the car, his eyes found mine across the lawn. It was the last time he would ever look at me. Headlights, a new van, this one with a news logo, then another. The vultures. The neighbors' lights were flicking on. One by one, the quiet, respectable facade of Maple Crest was shattering. My burner phone buzzed. A text from Sharon. The warrants for the builders' offices and their homes just hit, simultaneous to the arrests. It's a full takedown. Go home, Harper. Get some sleep. Another phone buzzed. My personal one, which I had kept turned off. A news alert. The first headline from a local blogger, who must have been listening to the police scanner: FBI raids home of Whitaker Builder CEO, family at center of probe. The story was out. The war was over. But the battle for the narrative had just begun. Traitor daughter or whistleblower? The world would have to decide. I didn't care. I just turned and walked away from the flashing lights into the darkness. The arrests at Maple Crest weren't an ending. They were simply the end of the phony war. The real war, the one of consequences, had just begun. My father, Colin, and my Uncle Malcolm were denied bail. The flight risk, the evidence of public corruption, and the sheer scale of the RICO charges were enough to keep them in a holding cell. But Brent Lawson, the accountant, the man who had wept and collapsed on my parents' living room floor, his lawyer, separate from my father's, argued successfully that Brent was a low-level player, a gopher, coerced by his overbearing father and uncle. He was a non-violent first-time offender. A judge, in a stunning lack of foresight, granted him bail. He was released 2 days after the raid. I had moved into a new apartment, a high-security building arranged by Sharon Davis, paid for by the funds she had successfully unfrozen in the civil suit. I was, for the first time in weeks, safe. Until the envelope arrived. It was slid under my door. No stamp, no return address. Inside, there was no note, just a single USB flash drive. I didn't plug it into my laptop. I called Concado, the FBI. They picked it up. They sent me the contents an hour later in a secure file. It was full of photographs. Me at the Starbucks the day I was suspended. Me at the Art Institute meeting my mother. Me walking into the anonymous hotel under the name Harper Parkson. The last photo was a high-resolution telephoto shot taken from a rooftop across the street, looking directly into my new secure apartment window. It was timestamped 45 minutes ago. Brent wasn't just out, he was watching me. The threat was clear. They had lost the legal battle. They were escalating to a physical one. I accepted Concado's offer of a panic button. I put it on my nightstand. The alarm was silent. It wasn't a building alarm. It was the wafer-thin proximity sensor the FBI had installed on my door. It was linked to my phone. My phone vibrated violently on the nightstand. My eyes snapped open. The clock read 3:02 a.m. I heard it, a faint, oily click. Not a pick, a key. They had gotten a key to this place. 2. The snick of the deadbolt sliding back. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. My heart felt like it had stopped. I did 3 things in a single, fluid motion. My thumb slammed the panic button. A silent signal to the FBI team parked 2 blocks away. My other hand grabbed my phone. I dialed 911, setting it to speaker, but left it face down on the mattress. The dispatcher's voice, a muted squawk, I immediately silenced. The line was open, my third hand, the one that had been under my pillow, grabbed the high-intensity pepper spray I now slept with. My bedroom door was open, a dark wedge of hallway visible against the city's ambient light. A shadow filled it. A figure dressed in black moved into the room. It paused, listening. It was holding something long and metallic, a hunting knife. The shadow moved toward the bed. It raised the knife. I hit the lamp. The room flooded with 100 watts of blinding light. Sudden light. He recoiled, hissing. His arm raised. Harper. It was Brent. His face was unrecognizable. It wasn't the weak, crying accountant. It was a mask of pure, rabid terror. He was sweating, his eyes wide and bloodshot. He lunged, the knife arcing down. I didn't hesitate. I rolled off the bed, hitting the floor, and emptied the entire canister of pepper spray into his face. He screamed. It was not a human sound. It was a wet, choking, agonizing shriek as the capsaicin hit his lungs. He dropped the knife, clawing at his face, blind and suffocating. Asterisk crash, asterisk the front door of the apartment splintered, flying off its hinges. FBI. Hands in the air. Hands in the air. The room was full of tactical gear, laser sights, and shouting. They were on him in a second, slamming his face into the carpet as he gagged and retched. Intruder neutralized. Suspect is Brent Lawson. Concado was at my side, pulling me to my feet. Are you hurt? Are you hit? I was shaking. The adrenaline was sickening. An electric wave, but I was unharmed. It's him. He had a knife. An agent was cuffing Brent, whose face was already swelling, his eyes sealed shut. We got his vehicle downstairs, sir, an agent called from the hallway. And a bag. He was running. They found it. His car, parked around the corner. In the trunk, a passport, a set of new identity documents, and a one-way ticket to Caracas, Venezuela, departing at 6 a.m. And his phone. He had been so panicked, he hadn't even locked it. Concado read the last text message, sent 40 minutes before the break-in from a new burner number. She knows about the Cayman account. She knows about the 7 million. She has to be handled permanently. Make it look like a break-in gone wrong. Then get out of the country. I'll take care of it from here. We'll trace the burner, Concado said, his voice grim. But I have a feeling it's going to trace back to the visitor log at the municipal jail. My father trying to order my execution from his cell. The new charges were filed by dawn: attempted murder, conspiracy, violation of bail. Brent Lawson was never getting out. The preliminary hearing was 2 weeks later. It was supposed to be a simple procedure to certify the charges and send the case to a grand jury. The courtroom was a circus. The press was there, the local news having a field day with the Whitaker crime family. My father, Colin, and my uncle, Malcolm, were in orange jumpsuits. They looked grey. They looked like they had aged 20 years. Their new lawyer, a $5,000 an hour shark from D.C., stood up. Your Honor, the defense moves to dismiss all charges related to the digital fraud and conspiracy. The prosecutor, a sharp woman from the U.S. Attorney's Office, looked baffled. On what grounds, counsel? We have a mountain of evidence. You have a mountain of conjecture, Your Honor, the lawyer said, his voice smooth as glass. Let's start with the so-called digital signature. The prosecution claims my clients forged Ms. Parker's signature. We contend that the prosecution's entire case rests on files provided by Ms. Parker herself, a sophisticated, disgruntled risk analyst with the high-level knowledge to create such a forgery. There is zero proof she didn't fabricate this evidence herself to frame her family. It was the mastermind memo reborn. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, they intend to introduce audio recordings they claim were made by the defendant's elderly mother, Matilda Whitaker. We move to have these recordings ruled inadmissible. They are laughably unauthenticated, a scratchy, muffled recording of an old woman's voice. We have no idea when it was made. We don't know if it was edited. It is hearsay. It is prejudicial. And it is not evidence. My blood ran cold. He was good. He was brilliant. He was painting me as the ultimate unreliable narrator. The judge looked at the prosecutor. He has a point, counsel. These are serious allegations. The chain of custody on this audio, how do you intend to authenticate it? The prosecutor was flustered. We have the metadata, Your Honor. The timestamps from the cloud. Metadata, the lawyer countered, Ms. Parker could have easily fabricated. We demand dismissal. I can authenticate it. The voice was quiet, timid. It came from the back of the courtroom. Every single person turned. Standing in the doorway, pale, dressed in a simple black dress, was my sister, Lydia. She hadn't spoken to me. She hadn't answered my calls. She had, I assumed, sided with our parents. My father's head snapped up. His eyes went wide. Lydia, he whispered, a sound of pure panic. No, Lydia said, walking forward down the center aisle, her heels clicking on the marble. Your Honor, she said, her voice shaking but clear. My name is Lydia Parker. I can authenticate the files. And who are you? The judge asked. I'm the one who put the camera in my grandmother's room. The defense attorney froze, his mouth slightly open. It wasn't just a voice recorder, Lydia continued, tears welling in her eyes. I gave it to her. I told her it was a nanny cam so we could check on her, but she was scared. Scared of him. She pointed at our father. She said she needed to protect Harper. She knew he was stealing. Lydia turned to the stunned prosecutor. The defense is right. The audio is incomplete. It's because the files are locked. There's a password. The password is Sugarbird. Sugarbird, the prosecutor asked. My father made a low, choking sound. Lydia, don't. It was our childhood nickname, Lydia said, her eyes finally finding mine across the courtroom. The one Grandma used for Harper. It's the password for the video. The courtroom exploded. Order, the judge roared. The technician's fingers flew across his keyboard. It's working, Your Honor. The audio files are syncing. They are syncing with MP4 video files. Play the file, the prosecutor said, her voice a low, triumphant growl. Play the one from October 5th, the day my father and uncle visited Matilda. The courtroom monitors flickered to life. It wasn't a scratchy audio file. It was a high-definition video from the corner of Matilda's room. There was my father, Colin, pacing in front of his mother's wheelchair. He was holding a piece of paper. And if anyone asks, my father's voice boomed in the silent courtroom. You say Harper was stressed. You say she was jealous. You say she had debt. This is the story. This is the only story. You will stick to this script. He was reading verbatim the mastermind memo. Now, the prosecutor said, play the file from September 30th, Brent Lawson's visit. The screen changed. There was my Uncle Malcolm, leaning into the camera. Brent was next to him, holding a tablet. No, no, you idiot, Malcolm's voice snarled on the video. Her signature. Look, Harper's signature. It has a loop. A specific loop, right here. You're not getting the loop right. It looks fake. Do it again. Practice the loop. The video showed Brent, his face pinched in concentration, practicing my signature on the tablet, forging it over and over. A collective gasp filled the room. It was done. The defense attorney slowly, carefully sat down. He put his pen on the table. He didn't have a single word left. It wasn't just a forgery. It was a conspiracy. It wasn't just audio, it was video. It wasn't unauthenticated. It was authenticated by the one person, the one innocent person, they had never accounted for. The judge looked at my father. He looked at my uncle. His face was a mask of cold, constitutional fury. This hearing is concluded, the judge said, his voice like granite. The evidence is ruled authentic and admissible based on the video evidence presented, specifically the conspiracy to forge signatures, fabricate evidence, and the clear attempt at witness tampering. I am remanding all defendants, no bail. It was over. I sat there, frozen, as the bailiffs pulled my father and uncle, now completely silent, out of the courtroom. The last thing I saw was Lydia. She was still standing in the middle of the room. She was looking at me, her eyes a universe of silent apology. I gave her a single, slow nod. The breach was closed. The sound of the heavy courtroom door slamming shut. The shriek of a prison van siren outside in the rain. I pulled out my phone. The Whitakers group chat, the one that had started all of this, was still there. I opened it. I looked at the last message. The one from my father all those weeks ago, you need to step away from things for now. I typed 4 words, understood. I'm leaving the fund. I pressed send, and then I hit delete and exit group. The screen went black.